When I was a young kid, I was a happy kid, as you can see in this photo right here. I wasn't. I kind of kept to myself. I was an introvert, and I had all these creative ideas in my head, but I didn't know how to do it. I wasn't confident. I wanted to express myself to the world. I come from a large Jamaican family with 13 uncles and aunts, and one of my uncles was the same age as me. His name was Danny. And Danny's the guy with the striped shirt, and I'm the guy with the cowboy shirt on the left. Danny was the opposite of me. He had a charismatic personality. He was funny, he was creative, and he was full of confidence. And I wanted that confidence, and I didn't have it. One day, when I was 14 years old, I was visiting Danny, and he was writing his name Devs everywhere. Devs, Devs, Devs. And that's not his name. Devs, Devs. And I said, why are you writing Devs? What does that mean? He said, it's graffiti. And I'd seen graffiti on the streets, but I didn't know what graffiti, how it happened or how it was done. And I thought it was interesting. And he said to me, if you want to do it, I can give you a name. And Danny said, since you have this personality, you're kind of a perfectionist, right? So maybe you should write Finesse, right? So I wrote Finesse. And just like Danny writing it everywhere, I wrote Finesse on my books, on the car, like everywhere in my room. Everywhere was Finesse, 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 Finesse. And that was what I became, Finesse. And it opened up this creative world inside my mind. It made me really think creatively. And that's what graffiti did for me. It made me think creatively. So I learned from Danny, but I also learned from books and magazines. And one of the particular books that I learned from was Subway Art. Subway Art's the book that you're looking at right now. And there's a train below, and it says, stop the bomb. And I paused for a second, and I was like, wait, Danny told me you have to write your name creatively. He didn't tell me that graffiti can have messages. You can actually have a message. So this was kind of, this stuck with me. So all these things that I'm learning from books and from magazines, I took that and I said, now it's time for me to do my first graffiti piece. My first graffiti piece somewhere in public space. There was an old forgotten basketball court down the street from my house. And I went to that basketball court and I wrote Finesse right in the middle of the basketball court. I was happy. I did my name, Finesse. I got arrested. The Boston Globe used me as an example to talk about how graffiti was destroying neighborhoods. I thought I was making this old rundown basketball court better. That's what I thought I was doing. I was trying to express myself and share this creativity within inside of me. But the police didn't see that. My mother was upset. She was really mad. My stepfather was pissed. We raised you to be this good kid, but why are you getting arrested? They didn't understand. And I didn't really understand what I was doing. So I had to change my name because I couldn't write Finesse anymore. So I changed it to Vice, which stands for Visually Intercepting Society's Emotions, One Image at a Time. That's what Vise1 stands for, and that's what I changed my name to. And I said, how can I use this skill and use it productively? So a friend of mine named George, he was another graffiti writer, and he was going to college for this thing called graphic design. And he was saying graphic design is very related to graffiti because you're taking letter forms and you're trying to do it very creatively. And I said, I understand that connection. So I went to Mass College, I applied for it, and I got accepted. And I was excited. I was like, I'm finally going to college for the first time. And while I was at college, I met this professor. His name was Chaz Maviyane-Davies. And Chaz changed my mind. So Chaz was an international poster designer from Zimbabwe, and he used his design as a weapon to make change in the world and in his community. And Chaz taught us that design isn't just about, making a beautiful website or making a beautiful magazine like Subway Art, the magazine I love. But design can be about sharing a message to the world. And that was similar to the train that I saw. And I'm like, wait, this is not what I thought it was. Maybe I can do that. So this is the first work of art that I did while I was in college. And what these poster series are is asking community members to fight back for their community, asking people to fight back for the communities because criminals are changing their names and changing these communities into bad places. And I thought that I needed to make change and get people to think about that. So after doing more research about the community and things that I was upset about, I found this statistic through reading, and it said teenage homicides have quadrupled in the last 10 years. And I was like, teenagers? This is where I learned graffiti, when I was a teenager. And I thought how my uncle inspired me to be creative. What if I can make these teenagers think creatively and be around creative mentors like my uncle was for me? So I got a small loan from Capital One. I pretty much maxed out my credit card. And I purchased 300 water guns. On these water guns had toe tags, what you would put on a dead body. And it says, your name could be on this line. And when you flip the toe tag over, it says, your name could be on this rhyme. Zoomix, a youth program for you. And what I wanted kids to realize that by going to the Zoomix, which is a nonprofit to help kids learn about music and actually get paid for it, they could be around creative mentors like I was and do something creative to occupy their time instead of thinking about guns in conflict with one another. So after doing all this work, learning about graffiti, and doing this project that was successful, I was on a complete high. I was like, I'm using design not to get arrested, but to actually impact people in my community. And I couldn't believe it. I got a phone call on October 2nd, 2011 from my Uncle Barry. I actually missed the phone call and I heard a voice message that said, I wanted to tell you this in person. Danny passed away. The person who inspired me to do what I'm doing with my life died. I was devastated. I felt like everything just fell on the ground. My organs just fell out my body. And I remember saying to myself, Danny's not dead. Danny's not dead. There's no way. And I said, I have to do something. I have to do something. And it really changed my life. It made me go, I need to be doing this work more. I need to be able to use this to change people's life like Danny changed mine. And one of the things Danny had in his room was this street sign. If you look in the back, it's circled. It's a bus sign. And that bus sign was a sign that kind of connected me to Danny. So I said, I need to do something that can memorialize his life. So I created this street sign that says DevZone, which was Danny's graffiti name. And me and Jason, a neighborhood friend, hung this sign in the front of the house where I learned how to do graffiti, which impacted my life, and where we lived in Boston. This is my way of memorializing Danny's life. This sign is still there 5 years later, and people in the community look at that as a sign to connect back to Danny. As I grew and thought about this work and how can I impact and teach people how to be creative, like how I was taught by Danny to be creative and inspire my life, I wanted to have people be inspired to be creative because I think creativity can lead to great things. So at the time, people were saying you should apply for this grant. It was a $100,000 grant to do some type of community project to connect with your community. And at the time, I was really busy, and I was like, I can't apply for that. I've never applied for a $100,000 grant. Yeah, right, $100,000. I don't even know how to start. At the time, I met my partner, Julia Roth, who had the same vision for me to use art as a tool to connect with community. And Julia said, why aren't you applying for this grant? You've done so much. You've done it. And I said, maybe I am. And she made me realize I need to apply. So within 3 days, I put all the paperwork, figured out what I didn't know, and applied for this grant. And I was a finalist, and I won. And my vision was to have if I could bring this art with the water guns or with some type of creativity in all these different places, like an ice cream truck, and give art to the community. So I created this thing called the Up Truck, me and Julia. And it was a way to connect with people and inspire them to be creative. And 20 years later, I was featured on the front page of the Boston Globe. The same newspaper that said I was destroying my community, I was improving my community. And you know the tool I used? Spray paint. These tools I learned through graffiti. And this is what we do in the middle of the street. And people are complete strangers. They always say, I can't do that. I'm not an artist. And then look what they create. Kids, adults, all different ages. They're transformed in this 1 second, and then it's there for 10 to 20 minutes, and they come back. And they share stuff to me. We drew this. Look what I drew. Look what my kid drew. And we ask them, what type of art do you want in your community? We play games with them to have conversations and have them express themselves. And people tell me stories about their lives that I would not have known. And I realized the value in these conversations. I won dominoes. And we have fun. Right in the middle of the street. Conversations, people coming together. Being creative. And we bring in kids together with the police at a time where people think they don't feel safe around police. So after doing all this work and connecting people, I said, what is my work? What is Cedric Douglas, Vise1's work? And I love doing murals. I love doing those basketball courts, but I've learned a lot of these different skills, and I wanted to transfer it to bigger spaces. I wanted it to be bigger than life. So I got commissioned by Northeastern University to do this mural. And this mural is about taking me back to that innocent child where I picked up that can and entered that world of creativity when I wrote Finesse. And that's a piece at Northeastern. This piece is talking about, so a lot of times black women are perceived as in a sexual or looked in a negative light. So this piece is kind of to show a black woman as Madonna and looking in a positive light in a futuristic way. That's in Lynn, Mass. This is in Virginia, Norfolk, Virginia, and it's the same thing about bringing races together and talking about futurism with black women. This is a piece in Peabody, and it's a grandmother and a black child, and it's about growth and bringing people together between races. I was in Miami for an international art festival, and there's artists from all over the world doing street art, doing these large-scale murals. And Julie and I were doing a mural about maybe 3 blocks from this particular part of Wynwood. Someone came up to us and said, "Did you hear? The kid died. The kid died." And we're like, "What kid died? What are you talking about?" "I think he's dead. He got hit by a car. The police ran him over." And we're like, "What?" And I could picture myself being that graffiti kid, and what if I died? And I was, "What? And what? The kid's dead? What happened? What was he doing?" And I just and me and Julie were talking about how during Art Basel, there's all these beautiful murals, but there's a lot of things going on in the world that no one's talking about. And we're like, why aren't people talking about that? And then we hear this news. I had to think about Danny and connect that, and I said, I want to honor this guy's life, Dems, Dilbert Rodriguez. And we hung the sign at the same site where he died, and it's a memorial. People don't go to graveyards, but it's in the community in that spot to be remembered, a place for people to remember his life. So I did this for Terrence Coleman. He was a young black man that got killed, had mental disability. His mother called, and he got killed during that phone call. Then I created these tools of protest for people to protest what's going on in their communities. And then I got this residency for Emerson. And the residency was, you should do whatever project you want. And then I wanted to talk about this more in a larger scale. So I took 400 red roses, and then on the red rose it says, in the last 5 years, 1,000 black men were killed in the middle of the street. And we passed them out to people. And it was touching. People really felt this. And we had a procession in the band, and we went out. That's my story. I have seen firsthand the value of honoring your creative abilities and what it can do. You have to listen to that voice, no matter what you're doing. If it's saying, I want to play that musical instrument, but you never want to take it out the closet and play. You want to go fix that classical car that's sitting in the driveway. Oh, I'll do it when I retire. No, do it now. You want to go dance, but you're afraid because you're the first person on the dance floor and people are going to judge you. Don't care, because take that chance, because it could lead you to unexpected things. It could lead you to happiness. Honor your creative voice, because your creative voice matters. Thank you.